both of us have been highly influenced by Scott Rogo's work and some of the parapsychologists of the 1980s and early 90s where they were exploring a number of facets. So they were looking into things like near-death experiences or ghostly sightings or psychic phenomena. And one thing that they looked into as well was something called cellular memory, I think it's called. And the whole idea about this is, and some of you out there will have heard of these stories, where somebody's had a transplant of some kind, a heart transplant or a lung transplant, etc., and their personalities have changed, or they've suddenly been able to start talking Chinese or a language that they're not particularly known of, but are able to completely, their personality changes slightly, but also as well as they're able to have the skills of the person who donated their lungs, heart, or any other transplant. And it's a really interesting phenomenon because obviously we see our body as kind of literally that, just a carrier of our soul in a way. We don't see that there's any sort of connection between any of our body parts and the possibility that it could carry our memory or personality traits. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of studies into this. And one of the things that one of the regular percentages that are out there, that 6% of people who have a transplant, also 6% believe that their personality has changed or their mindset has changed because of the transplant.
Yeah, I mean, I would, playing the devil's advocate, I would argue having a second chance at life, for instance, they have a heart and lung transplant, and then, or, whether it's they only have one kidney and somebody comes along, sad circumstances, but they get a kidney that gives them a new, fresh life. Are they sort of thinking, well, life is for the living, I'll do things I've not done before? So that is one argument, maybe a sceptical side, but it doesn't preclude from the 6%. I know it's only a small percentage, and there's got to be something in it because it's however small, it is still there, and it is still looked at, largely as pseudoscience, as in the scientific community are not necessarily taking it seriously as perhaps that they could. And maybe that is one thing where maybe they could push into it, like I say, memories, when you look at the cells in the body, when you look at cellular memory, there was a study done, where this gentleman, I'd have to find the details, I'm sorry, I'll have to put them in a document maybe and put them on the Centre 2 Facebook page for you to have a better look into it, if you want to go there via Facebook. Obviously, a scientist undertook a study on people who passed away and tried to get the age of the various cells within the body, because there's a lot of false information, your body is totally replaced every 7 to 10 years, which is not factual. The neurons, the ones that are in the brain, they spark over, they carry out the processes through the cerebral cortex and the grey matter, they go over towards the brain stem, the motor neurons, and these are as old as the human organ, as the human body, so they don't get replaced. Whereas the epithelial cells, those the lining of the stomach, you call it the intestines, which are undergoing a barrage every single day. Imagine all that acid going into your stomach, and they are getting replaced on a daily basis. He did it similar to carbon dating, and bones. He was saying here, on average, bones replaced approximately every 15 years, and of course the whole process is as we ourselves age, then that whole process slows down. So maybe in an average lifetime, we might have 2 or 3 new skeletons, and the cells of a person are roughly about 10 years, maybe once a decade. But I found it fascinating, because we all put down that, we all believe, I do feel, without research, of course, that the memory is only limited to the brain, the neurons, where really muscle memory, type in driving a car, doing things that you normally do in the subconscious way, are linked over to muscle memory and cell memory. They put it down to what is termed as implicit, which is an unconscious memory. Priming procedural is doing the sort of the motor cortex, where you just do things, and that is muscle memory. If you've been to the gym and you train regular, then you have, say, 6 or 7 months or a couple of years off, you go back, your body remembers those movements, and then priming Sorry, the priming is very much a case of word associations, things that we learn through life, how to do A and B, how to, those English things, what word goes with, hand, glove. It's those type of things. I find it fascinating in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also as well is you need oil for your blooming chair.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I mean, one of the cases I read about was about a young man who had cystic fibrosis, and he always knew that he had to he was going to end up with a new liver. Went to Cambridge, Edinburgh Hospital, had the liver transplant, and he came around after the 9-hour operation, and he's fairly normal. And then suddenly he started shouting a long list of sort of swear words and describing the pain, swearing left, right, and centre. And he said he actually told a researcher that he'd never, ever sworn before, because his mum has always said, look, you've got to have good memory, manners. You've got to, kind of always be a gentleman rather than, kind of that. But so they assumed it was, sort of painkillers and all that sort of thing. And then near enough for every single word after that, he started swearing again. He still has this problem where every now and again he keeps, kind of swearing. He said he never swore before and never did that before. Had the new liver. It came from an 18-year-old girl. He's keen to find out more about who that person was, because he wonders if sort of personality trait from there. So, I mean, that's pretty strange, I think. Another gentleman, he ended up having renal failure, kidneys. His kidneys, he had to have them transplanted. And from then, started drinking bitter. He could never drink it before. I hated the taste, hated that sort of thing, hated the taste of bitter or beer. And now he drinks it and he loves it, absolutely loves it. And that seems to be a running thing, that when people have their kidneys changed, there's a change in their taste. So, I mean, do you know of any sort of link where that changing your kidneys could react to your taste? Because, I mean, surely there's not any neurological link between them.
But like I say, the kidneys are the organ of getting rid of waste, fluid waste, to balance the blood, make it, and it's associated with your heart. If your blood pressure goes up, then it thins it takes more component out of the blood, and therefore makes it easier for your heart to pump that blood. So, it sort of regulates the heart. It's linked in with that. But, the heart is sort of looked at as being, a seat of feelings, emotions. We all know that when we go through grief or whatever, it really pulls on the heart. You feel almost like a lump in your heart, don't you? Like an ache rather than a lump. And therefore, is the feelings there, from the various organs of the body, the hippocampus, the amygdala, that is known for feelings, emotions, and linked over to taste. That is why if somebody says, oh, apple pie with custard, we can almost taste it and smell it, So is there that in? Because it's the endocrine system. Is that all linked up with hormones, all the chemicals that react in a more subconscious way and have impact on organs? Could it be through that? Because people say you are what you eat, so maybe it has some bearing. Maybe it is. If somebody, it'd be interesting if there was a case whereby a person was vegan and then suddenly wanted to eat meat, because the person giving the organ would have been a person who ate maybe a lot of red meat or whatever, would that change?
It's interesting you mentioned about heartache, because I was engaged for 3 years and we split up pretty badly. Within a day or so, I started getting heart pain, like an ache in there. And I found it strange. I went to the doctors because I'm a hypochondriac. And the doctor said, it's fine. Are you under stress or anything? And he said, it's heartache. He said, it really is proper sort of, your heart's broken sort of thing. And I thought, this is really strange. And obviously this was pre-internet. And I've looked into it every now and again. And now it's becoming more recognised that people do suffer from heartache. And it's not just about personal relationships. It can also be relatives passing and that sort of thing. And you do have this thing where people suffer with a heartache, can last anything from sort of 2 weeks to a month, and it's very prevalent in men, and it's actually seen as it can actually be a killer as well. Is people who suffer it sometimes do go on to heart attacks as well.
Sorry Martin, they say passing with a broken heart, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, somebody I know, she was female actually, and husband passed away. And within a week, she'd passed away, but she'd been complaining that she'd had heartache ever since he passed away. You could say it was the stress, and or because she was elderly, but she did say she had heartache. Her heart was broken, and she died within a week. And she died of, I think, the aorta had torn. So it's interesting. It's kind of, to me, I think it's one of those things where I think because of probably Victorian, looking for the soul, Victorian ethics of where they were trying to find the soul, and they were saying it was nested, sort of in the pituitary gland, or it was nested behind the neck, and what we've kind of done is kind of said that all the important bits are in your head, and your soul's in your head, and all that sort of stuff. When actually, if we look at the construct of our body, inside of us, we've got the dust from the stars that are billions of years old. We're made up of water that's existed since the beginning of the universe. We are, kind of the universe. And I come back again to this where I think it's one of those things where if the universe is consciousness, if we are all connected, if we can psychically communicate with each other, then surely, this body that we have does carry our memories. And not to prolong this point, but interestingly, is when I've done mindfulness lessons or mindfulness with people, I had one lady who, and I think I might have mentioned this before, where she constantly complained that she had tennis elbow. Okay. Mm-hmm. She suffered with it. First time I met her, she had her arm in a sling and she said, "Oh, I have tennis elbow." I said, "Oh, do you play tennis much?" She said, "I've never played it in my life, but the doctor keeps saying I've got tennis elbow." So anyway, we did a series of sessions where I was teaching her meditation about acknowledging that, sometimes we have thoughts and just say, "Yep, it's there, but I don't want to listen to it. I'm not being judgmental on myself. Mm-hmm. I accept it. I move on. I'm living in the now." And we did this for 6 weeks. And over that period of time, her tennis elbow got better.
Yeah.
And she now meditates every day, 15 minutes to 20 minutes a day. She doesn't have tennis elbow. All the stress about a particular event that happened to her all built up, and it manifested in a way that she thought she had tennis elbow. And we do carry that pain. We do. I mean,
Oh, definitely. It has to be, it has to be. That's a very good point you've made there, Martin. Does it reside in the physical body? Do we hold things? Is some of the illness that we have part of that sort of situation?
Yeah, I mean, with that, I looked into this further, and there are further experiences of where people had neck aches or had bad knees or stuff like that. Yeah. And through meditation, and you could say, well, okay, well, maybe meditation is working in that they're feeling more relaxed. But either way, two things are happening. Is number one, the issue that's causing the stress has been addressed and dealt with non-judgmentally.
Yeah.
And secondly, it's then causing, and I believe stress to muscles cause them to swell and cause them to be painful. So it's helping in that respect as well. It's like what we were talking about last time, where we were talking about, well, people say Reiki doesn't work because you don't get healing from it or anything like that. But actually, if you feel that you're relaxed, you're halfway there with, kind of on the healing process.
Yeah.
Is removing stressful situations around you. And I think this is why we can't rule out that, some of our vital organs out there, our vital organs can actually maybe carry parts of our consciousness, that we do store away parts of our consciousness. Well, unfortunately, that young man got the swearing of the 18-year-olds.
There are elements whereby, the personality traits change markedly, to an extent that, as I say, it's something that people wouldn't generally doing. Somebody who is sort of scared of heights suddenly want to go bungee jumping. You're thinking, I'm not in a million years. You know what I mean? So there's got to be some credence in there. And I do feel with people's consciousness raising, they want to know more, when you're looking at not having to go at people's religious beliefs, but perhaps people want to know more, and therefore they're sort of thinking out there and wanting their own answers. And maybe this sort of situation where the memory is not just in your brain, as in, the organs, is it in the body tissue, or is it, because obviously people don't get, I've not heard of cases or I've not come across cases where people have a change of behaviour because they've had skin graft or whatever, So I think it's more to do with the organs, particularly the lungs, the heart, the kidneys, the liver. I think they may well hold more sort of memories of who we are, and perhaps the sort of memories of the person who, in difficult circumstances, their organ is available for transplant into somebody to give that new lease of life. Then maybe the organ that is coming to them, the sort of memories are far stronger. Maybe the person has a more dominant personality, a stronger personality. I've got to, rather than I'll do it tomorrow attitude. Maybe that has a place to play.
I think also as well is before people start looking at the fear aspect of that. Oh my God, if I ever have a kidney transplant, am I going to have the soul of the dead person?
No, I don't
drink beer. No, don't force it down me. No.
I think it's a valid point, Martin. Because
I think this is kind of memory retention within an organ rather than sort of spirit intervention. It's like what I was saying about the tennis elbow, is that the memory had stored in her muscle into her elbow. Now you could say, well, why did it go there or whatever? But we store things all over our body. We store fat in places that we don't want it. I'm sure most of us out there are thinking, why does it store? Why have I got bingo wings, or why have I got kind of love handles? The body stores water. It stores fat. In water you can store memory. So
well, yes, I mean, we are, depending which website you check, of course, but anywhere really from 60 to 75% or more made up of fluid, the blood, the liquid between the cells, and then the liquid within the cell, because that is obviously we need water to live as well as oxygen, obviously. But you're looking at everything there as being fluid based, but one biomechanical electrical organism, that needs water.
It's a fascinating subject. I think it's one that we can't dismiss, and I think it's nice to talk about it, just to spark people's interest in cellular memory. And it's worth checking out. There's lots of articles out there. There's a few scientific articles out there as well. I was reading one yesterday about heart transplants. I'm trying to think. I'll put the link on the podcast, but there's actually a really good scientific paper from America, how it could happen and why it seems ridiculous. And they claim that there's actually 15% of heart transplants believe that they've had personality changes.
Yeah, I think.
But as you say, it could be they've got a new lease of life. They want to do new things, but also as well as maybe it is a bit of cellular memory.
Yeah, I think I was just using that sort of thing, because that's something that I think people will naturally say, oh, it's because they got the new lease of life, you're going to live more.
You've got to question it, yeah.
You have to, yeah. But I think, the UK in general lags well and truly behind the USA, in the fact is, let's investigate this, let's have a look at this. People in the UK, and I'm not having to go at UK science, they just seem this, I think it's what's keeping this in the pseudoscience, rather than thinking, well, it merits further investigation, the same as the near-death experiences. The Hindu belief of reincarnation, that is the way that they find the new Dalai Lama, by looking at a past life, and he can sort of come through and say, yeah, that's mine, I don't know that one, that is this. And they have that memory again of what it is that they used to do as the Dalai Lama. So, when you're looking at that, it needs further research, definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree. So that was our talking point. We wanted to have a chat today about cellular memory, something a little bit different from mediumship and psychic ability. Hope you all enjoyed it. And if you want to leave us some comments, drop us an email.
Just a question, just a comment, Martin, if I may.
Yeah, fire away.
Anybody listening to this has had this type of thing happen, where they've had an organ and suddenly personality, or they have personality changes. It'd be nice to hear from you. And I just wonder, if you have an organ that's from a medium, would it sort of help a person to be, sort of having glimpses, or might open their sort of consciousness to want to look into mediumship more, I wonder.
Yeah, good question. Let us know, people. Know what you think. It'd be interesting to find out how many of you out there either believe in this or think that they've had this experience themselves in any particular aspect. So hope you've enjoyed it, everybody. Great to talk to you again, Ian. And,
yes, likewise, Martin. Thank you.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.